Welcome to Interview Connections. We're the first ever podcast booking agency. I'm Jessica Rhodes, the founder. And 12 years ago in 2013, I started booking my dad as a guest on podcasts because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And fast forward to today, we're a multi-seven-figure agency. We've worked with over 800 clients. We've booked more than 30,000 podcast interviews. And this podcast is all of our top lessons from the last 12 years, booking entrepreneurs on podcasts, scaling our company to be multi-seven figures a year, distilled down into bite-sized topics and episodes to help you learn from us. I co-host this show with Interview Connections co-owner and CEO, Margie. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode.
Today's episode is all about the secret to closing more organic sales in your business. How do you grow your business without a big social media following, without paid ads, without a huge email list, and without having to understand an algorithm that is truly unpredictable and always changing? The answer is podcast guesting. So we get people in all stages of business who get on consult calls. And they're like, does this work? So we're going to go through how this works, how you close more organic sales in your business through podcast guesting. A few, just bringing it down to the most basic things that you need to be successful with this strategy. You need to have a clear ideal buyer who your messaging is speaking to. So if you're just in the beginning and you haven't sold anything and you're like, well, it's for everybody and maybe this person and maybe this person, if you pour gasoline on that in the form of getting a bunch of visibility, you might not see results because you don't have that clarity. So your messaging doesn't need to be perfect. One of the big messages of this is nothing needs to be perfect, but you need to have the bare bones structure to make money. A business is about making money. If you are not selling something to someone else who's paying you for it, you do not have a business. It does not matter how nice your website is. It does not matter how many social media followers you have. If you are not selling people something, you don't have a business. So these are the basics. Ideal buyer, who you are speaking to. This can be evolving, but there should be some clarity here so that you know what shows you're going on and you know what you're talking about. Number 2, you should have a solid, valuable offer that is clear and appropriately priced. You can have more than one offer, that's no problem, but you have to have an offer. So if you're like, I want to get out there on podcasts because I feel so inspired, I want to be a coach, what's your offer? It's okay if this is super custom. Maybe you do one-on-one coaching and it really depends on the person and where they're at, and you create something super custom with them to work one-on-one. That is totally fine. It doesn't have to be like a formula or like the same thing you sell everybody, especially if you're a solopreneur, but you have to have an idea of how you are delivering value to your ideal buyer that they are paying you for. Number 3, you need to be talking about your offer a lot so that people can find you and know that it's for them. People need to know what you're doing and you need to tell them a lot. You need to talk about it one-on-one with people. You need to talk about it one-to-many. You need to be talking about it probably more than you think you are, because you would be surprised how many people follow you and have no idea that you do that or that you sell that because they're not paying as close attention to you as you are. So you have a clear ideal buyer, you're talking to them. You have something to sell them. You have value to offer them in the form of some type of offer, whether it's a product or a service. We're going to focus on service. So you have some type of service that is going to bring value to them, that they are going to pay you money for, and you're talking about it a lot to make sure everybody knows that you do this. If they want this, they can come to you. If they know someone who wants this, they can send them to you, and you're doing that consistently. If you only do these things with no fancy website, with no big social media following, you can build a business. You can make a lot of money. You can get a lot of clients through referrals, through word of mouth. If you are doing a great job and you're doing these 3 things, you can have a business. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? So how do we grow this? This is the bare bones basics you need to then get visible to people outside of your warm market through podcast guesting, which we're going to talk about now.
Yeah. So you need visibility to targeted audiences of people who need what you sell, right? So once you know your buyer and you have your offer and you're talking about it, you know how to talk about it, you actually need to go talk about it to people who need it, right? The above steps do work once you're getting visibility. So when you are getting outside of your warm market, that personal network, like for me, it was my dad was my first client. He referred a couple more clients to me, and it just slowly grew from there just through referral. That's where many of our clients get to six figures, just through that referral network. So once you're going outside of that warm referral network, you need some type of storefront, right? That could be a website. It could be a really solid social media presence. You don't need to spend, $20,000 on some fancy website, because you can close a lot of sales directly to people who hear you on a podcast, who go directly to your calendar page or your link tree or your web, a simple landing page about your offer. So this is where a lot of people get stuck, is they kind of get the first three steps that Margie talked about. And then before they get visibility, they're like, I need a funnel, I need a website, I need all this stuff in place. And we're going to, in this episode, just continue to simplify it, because simplification is the key to you growing to seven figures with no paid ads. Okay. So you need some type of storefront, which is just a place. My dad, as you may have heard in other episodes, he was my first client. He was my business coach. He helped me start Interview Connections. He would always say, your home base on the web.
I love that. Your home base on the web. And if you're like, why are Jess and Margie talking to me like I'm an idiot? We're not. We don't think you're an idiot. You're a very smart person, but you are overthinking this. And so maybe you're like, no, I'm not this person. And then maybe this episode isn't for you. But we see brilliant entrepreneurs delivering value. They have so much to offer their ideal client. They're great at what they do. And they get bogged down with all this complexity of like, they're panicking. They're like, oh my God, I need to grow my social media. I need to build a really complicated funnel and I don't know how to build it. So I'm going to pay someone else $10,000 to build this crazy funnel. And then I need such a nice website. And it's like, no, this is the basics. Yeah. This is the basics that you need. You could grow a 7-figure business and beyond and keep it this basic. So don't overthink this, because that is a trap.
It's really it's the two S's. It's simplicity and scrappiness. That's really it. We are the scrappiest. I'm not going to say the word in my head because I think we got to keep this going clean, but we're scrappy. Okay. We're scrappy. And that's what this is about. It's about keeping it simple, not investing in things that you don't need to invest in. Just keep it simple. Okay. So you need a home base on the web, Jim Palmer style, home base on the web. Where are you sending people to? Next, you need a way to bring people from a cold market into your system. So you have your home base on the web. Now, how are you going to bring people into your ecosystem once they get to your home base on the web, to your virtual storefront? There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. You can have a link for them to book a call, having a simple calendar link. You could have a way for them to connect with you on social media. They connect with you on LinkedIn, they friend you on Facebook, follow you on Instagram, get into your DMs. You could have a way for them to opt into your email list. Funny story. I don't know if it's funny, but I did go to the Wayback Machine, because as I was looking through this outline, I'm like, oh, wow, what did interviewconnections.com look like? Well, you could go to the Wayback Machine and see what our website looked like in 2014. And there was an opt-in, there was some free reports, a way for people to opt in and get more information. If you have a podcast or you're linking to episodes you've done on other people's show, they could listen to your podcast. The goal is when you're in front of other audiences, colder audiences who don't know you yet, they're not friends with people that you've worked with, they're not referrals, then you want to warm them up with your content, warm them up with a call, warm them up with some videos and some posts. So you want to have a way to warm those audiences up.
Yes. And again, don't overthink this. We have people who really overthink. This is your call to action. This is what's going to be at the end of the podcast. At the end of your interview, the host is going to say, how can listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do? Some variation on that. don't panic. You don't need to spend 3 months trying to panic build a quiz because you think the only way that people make money from podcasts is if they have a quiz for the listeners to take. Like, you want to look at what is already working in your business and just use that. So if you know that people who are, the podcast is going to warm them up quite a bit, they're going to get to know you. Where do you want to send them? What's working? It might be as simple, like Jess said, as a consult call. Maybe that you do a really great job with your email list. So having them opt into something simple that's high value to them will allow you to stay in communication with them. You might tweak it. This might change and evolve over time, but it's where can these people who've heard you connect with you? Very, very simple. Podcast guesting is such a valuable strategy because it's, in my opinion, the warmest possible traffic after referrals. A referral is always going to be super high trust because when someone they love and trust says, I trust this person, that's always going to be a very organic, easy sale. If you're aligned with them and they're aligned with you, it's going to work out. Now, once we're getting beyond that warm market, I would say podcast guesting is like the second warmest market after your actual people who know you or know someone who knows you. We have podcast guesting. And that's what makes it so, so valuable because you're getting so much of their time. The real estate of people's focus and attention is so scarce. And I will tell you, I have made really big purchases, decisions, like my financial plan or these serious things because of podcasts, because I listen to them either on their own podcast or as a guest on another person's podcast. And I've made big investments, important investments, trusting them with my family's financial future, big things. I would not have done that from following them on social media. There is no number of social media posts that would have made me say, you know what? Here's all my money and my kids' college. You seem cool. It just wouldn't have happened for a number of reasons. Social media is pretty short form. Also, when I'm on social media, I am not paying attention. Your girl is dissociated. I am scrolling. It's just not going to happen. But if I'm taking a little walkie walk and I'm listening to a podcast, I'm in it with you. I am there with you when you're telling your story. I feel like I know you. Mm-hmm. And so it is so, so powerful. And it is such a great way to get beyond referrals in your warm market in a way that is still so warm and so personal and so high touch. And so you have this ideal buyer, you're speaking to them, you're being yourself, you're telling stories, you're telling them how to connect with you at the end of the episode. It's just a very natural process. So don't overthink it.
Yeah, I love that. Couldn't agree more. So listen to your interviews. Many of you listening may already be clients of Interview Connection. So, listen to your interviews. We do interview audits for our clients. After, 10 episodes, we're going to do an audit for you. If you're thinking about working with us, we're going to help you with this. Listen to your interviews. Work on improving. Because if you're doing podcast guesting and you're not seeing results, you're not seeing an ROI, you're not seeing people reach out, there's just something about the strategy that needs to be tweaked because speaking to ideal buyers, it works. So if it's not working, it's what's your message? How are you delivering your interviews? Are you giving enough stories? I actually was just listening to one of our clients' podcasts. He asked me for some feedback and I said, you're giving great information. You're an expert, it's clear. But you got to add more stories because I can't see myself as your client when you just tell me information. Add more stories. So maybe it's adding more stories. Are the topics actually setting you up for success? Are your topics that you're being interviewed about the things that your ideal buyer wants to listen to, right? Maybe there's a misalignment there. Is your CTA correct? Are you sending people to the right place? So these are all the ingredients in the recipe for success with podcast guesting. So there are so many factors, and that's why it's good to work with us at Interview Connections because we actually we're there on the sidelines with you, helping you. Because if you just go get yourself booked on podcasts, but any one of these factors may not be in the right place, and then you might not see results. So If you do want support on this strategy and you're like, okay, I get it now, you guys outlined it for me perfectly and I'm ready, go to interviewconnections.com. You can book a consultation call with us and we'll help get you started.